Well, let's talk about this partial lunar eclipse that's
Hmm.
going to actually, isn't it taking place this weekend?
Yes, it actually is. And as I said, it's part of what started last summer, so
Yeah.
people have to look at the bigger picture rather than just get caught up in the here and now.
Hmm.
But for the here and now, particularly for this summer, because see, this eclipse is landing very close to our recent summer solstice, so
Yeah.
it kind of gets caught up in the summer solstice energy, and it's actually even bigger than that. We'll talk about it's setting up what we would call in astrology a pattern called a grand cross. So it
I was
just
going to
looks like a
say, the
cross.
Grand Cross is in here someplace, isn't it?
So a grand cross is like, well, of course, if you were to draw in the points in the sky, it would look like a cross, like,
Right.
like a kid connecting the dots in a book. But really, think of like a row of dominoes. You knock one domino and the whole row goes over.
That's right.
So in the business world, they have a phrase, management by crisis. I run over here and fix this problem, and then I run over here and fix that problem, and before you know it, you're making yourself crazy. Eventually you get tired and say, well, I need to manage my life by objective, and I need to, like a chess player, look 4 steps down the road. If I take this action, there's going to be this reaction and a reaction
Right.
after that.
Right.
And so the good thing of what's going on this summer is people are being called to look at their life from a more holistic point of view rather than this is rude, but I'll give you some examples from clients. I've had clients say, if I could just do the thing I want after this person dies, or after I get a job, or in other words, they're waiting for external circumstances to be able to get what they want,
Exactly.
and setting up outer limitations.
Yes.
And I'm not saying that, the whole thing with maybe somebody choosing to leave the planet, or job changes that so many people are losing their house, or the things that are going on. I understand that they're scary, but if they would pull back and look at it from a bigger picture and say, what is it that's trying to be birthed out of you? And because this pattern that we're calling a grand cross is in place at the solar or the summer solstice,
Yes.
that means it's part of the 3 months energy, because we cast a chart for the next 3 months at a
Yes.
solstice. And of course, this eclipse the lunar eclipse comes right in on the tail of this solar or summer solstice rather. So we're all being called to say, how can we put all the pieces of our life together rather than putting certain parts of our life on hold? And I understand this is a process, and much of this is going to go into 2011.
Yes.
But
Yes.
we're in seed planting stages, the way I'm looking at it.
Yeah.
What seeds do people want to plant to bring their life into a whole thing? And specifically for the lunar eclipse, it's in Capricorn, which has to do with boundaries. And on the other side is Cancer, which says, what am I doing that really nurtures me?
Right.
Versus what are the things I'm doing out of guilt or obligation or all the wrong reasons?
Not being accountable to self. What can I do to be accountable to myself?
Exactly.
And set some boundaries,
Yeah.
or stand up and be heard.
Yeah.
Yeah, something like that.
And you just really have to be very simple. You don't need to make it complicated. What are the things I'm doing that are nurturing me, and what are the things that are not nurturing to me?
I think that's why I've been talking a lot about the introspection.
Absolutely.
And the introspection is an observation of all aspects of your life, to sit down, get quiet, and go inside, and it's knowing how to ask the right questions.
Yes.
And the astrology is just reinforcing that in all
Yeah.
the lives of the people that I've worked with, because it's affecting everybody on the planet. you
I
might say.
absolutely agree with you.
Yeah.
And I always like to encourage people around eclipses to sneak out of their day-to-day routine life, and whether they pull off with a journal in the garden or whether they go sit up
Yeah.
on the mountain and meditate, whatever
Right.
that is for people, I definitely say this is a time for finding out, what does your spirit really want to do, not just your whole little list of to-do things.
Well, isn't the lunar eclipse a feminine energy and the solar eclipse is a masculine energy? Could we look at it that way too?
That would be a reasonable way to look at it.
Going in is more of
Yeah.
going in right brain function,
Yeah.
it's going in and asking the
It-
senses.
In a general way, I would agree with that. The only disagreement I would have is this summer, the July 11th solar eclipse is in the sign Cancer, which rules the feminine, women, nurturing, families,
Really?
digestion. So this solar eclipse that we're having this
Wow.
summer actually, while maybe it's masculine, in generic terms.
Taking your power back. How about that? Can we
Yeah.
say that?
Yeah,
Where is it that
absolutely.
you're losing your power, and where do you need to take it back?
Absolutely.
Because Cancerian energy has a
Yeah.
tendency to go down there and put all their little treasures deep down inside and stick
Yep.
them on shelves and organize them. And really, it takes a lot for them to bring that up to the surface
Yep.
and have a demonstration with it in their life. And if you've got four planets in Cancer,
Yes.
depending what they are, can be a very emotional
Yeah.
difficulty for your life, you know, to bring those emotions up.
I
Self-esteem.
just saw a client who has a lot of Cancer planets today, and she considered the word garage sale to be a dirty word because we were talking about clearing the emotional clutter out of her life. And I says, well, you can save one thing that holds those emotions
Yeah.
that you want. You don't need 6 things. And because her house was kind of taking over, shall we say.
Yeah.
So yes, we need those things that tap in on this emotional level, but where do we overdo it and impede our progress, shall we say?
Well, that's where I think it's important, you know, if you can understand your astrology and then you can take it maybe a little bit further where you have some kind of assistance in the area where there's going to be, let's say, a challenge.
Yes.
I like to take challenge and throw it over here and say adventure
Yeah.
because it feels better, because actually in a shift of perception, it is.
Yeah.
And you're much more likely to want to go towards your adventure than a challenge. But the fact is I think it's a shift of perception,
Yes.
you know? So if you can have somebody, if you can see from your astrologer that there's going to be a difficult transition happening, it's wise to have somebody who's going to be helping you through that period and explaining maybe some of these things that you just don't get. You know?
I certainly think that somebody who's got an objective perspective is
Yes.
a valuable person to have in your life.
Yes.
You still have to take responsibility for the decisions. You can't go blame Mercury retrograde because something got screwed up in your life.
No.
If you know Mercury, the communications planet, is going screwy, as it will in late August, early September, well, you leave more room in your schedule, you adjust your life, you take appropriate actions, but you can't just wag your finger and say, oh, it's Mercury retrograde's fault.
Yeah, well, my Mercury is in Virgo.
Aha.
It's going to be hitting in there around my birthday. It's going to be kind of funny to see exactly what's going on in the communications department.
Something's going to get reorganized, that's for
Yes.
sure. Yeah.
Okay, let's say that somebody's birthday falls on this lunar eclipse or the solar eclipse.
Sure.
What would be some of the things that they would be dealing with?
Well, number one, at your birthday, there's a chart we run called a solar return, which is an
Right.
annual forecast. So if you're having your birthday at an eclipse, that means your solar return chart for the next year, your birthday year, is going to have that eclipse in it for a whole year. So while most
Wow.
people are just getting it for that 3-month period, the lucky few are getting it for a whole year.
Hello.
And if it's a lunar eclipse, the full moon, that is some sort of emotional realignment that is going
Yes.
on for people. And if it's the solar eclipse, it's saying not just what are you doing, but what is it that your spirit is calling you to do? Where do you need to give yourself permission to let who you really came to be in this life come out and be expressed? And at your birthday, that means it's going to be nagging you for a whole year.
Oh, yeah. That,
Yeah.
that would be a very interesting experience. I don't know if I'd want it, but maybe I would. I don't know. I just think it would be somewhat of a real adventure to be conscious in dealing with something like that.
Well, the eclipses switch signs, as I said earlier, about every year and a half, which means that the eclipses make a full circle every 18 and a half years.
Yeah.
So somewhere every 9 years, you're going to get it whether you like it or not.
Yeah.
And you just need to kind of know your chart and know where things are going on in the sky to do that, or, of course, have an astrologer who can help you with that.
Well, you know, I was thinking about all of these alignments that we're going to be going through. And I've done a lot of reading and research.
Yes.
And some of the astrologers that I've read about have said, a lot of them have said, that in their lifetime they don't think they'll ever see anything quite like this. That caught my attention.
Yes.
It's pretty dramatic. So I thought we could lead into this right here, the
The T-square.
The T-square,
Yeah.
yes.